Great to see you here again. My name is Luc de Kuster, founder of the Kuster Academy. And in this presentation, we're talking about the CAPM course or preparation course, the third part. In this first lesson, we're going to look at the review of what we did in CAPM 1 and 2. And in this video, we talk about the terms and terminology according to PMI. But before we start, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Let's have a look at the different elements about the terms and terminologies that we saw in the previous courses. Now, remember that the PMI is the leading non-profit project management organization in the world and provides highly renowned certification programs. When you're holding one of their certificates, you are sure to have a high reputation and remuneration. In order to be able to communicate between all project managers, they also have a lexicon with terms and definitions, and people should clearly understand what the different terms mean, certainly when operating in an international environment. Let's have a look at some essential terms and definitions. There are a lot of definitions. There is a PDF file attached to this lesson in which you find all the official definitions of the PMI. I just select a small number of those terms and definitions in this video, but you can find more elements about this. In the following videos, I will also introduce some more definitions, but it's not possible to describe all the definitions that are in the lexicon, but you can read it there and understand what they mean. Now, when you're dealing with the PMI and participating in the PMI certification exam, it's very important that you only use the official definitions. Of course, in a business environment, it may happen that you will use your own business-specific definitions. That's not a problem as long as everybody understands what you mean. But when you're talking to PMI, when you're dealing with the exams, you have to be sure that you use these approved definitions. Now, you can also have your own definitions, and when you're dealing with an organization which has their own definitions, it's good to make a kind of dictionary to understand what you both are saying. A very important definition in the PMI is the project. What is a project according to the PMI? A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And we find three very important elements in it. First of all, it's a temporary endeavor. It has a start and a finish. It's unique. Of course, we can discuss about uniqueness, and we create a product, a service, or a result. Product, quite easy. We build a car or an airplane. A service, we have, for example, a website. And a result is where we talk about process improvements. So these are different possibilities that we can have. Now, the scope triangle, everything is around quality. And we look at the scope, time, and cost. And when we have a specific combination of those three parameters, we have a specific quality level. Now, we also call this the iron triangle or the triple constraint. The links relate scope, time, and cost to quality. And whenever we change one of those elements, it will have an effect on the two others. Now, we use it to define what parameters are important for the project. And one of the things, quality should never be compromised. Now we have this element here when we are looking at the deterministic and the adaptive approach. In a deterministic approach, what the main element is the scope. And in fact, we plan the scope, so it's a plan-driven approach, and the time and cost are variable. In an agile environment, we have, in fact, a value-driven element. And what we have is we have a certain time and cost to create a project, and we will see what scope we can create. So these are some differences that we have between a classical waterfall project and an agile project. Now, when we look at some other definitions, we have creep. Creep and gold plating are very important. Creep means that we are adding items to the scope that have not been approved. Creep will lead to delays, additional costs, and increased risks. Gold plating, on the other hand, is making things nicer than they should be. A very nice example is the blinking cursor that you saw on the old computers. It was not meant to be that, but the people made this. Now you have some additional lines of programming, in this case a little bit, but in some case you can buy products which are a lot better than what you need. You can put features in the program that are very nice, but not really necessary. So gold plating typically leads to an increased cost of the project. When we also look at another concept, but we will be talking about that later, is the concept of the rolling wave. I already spoke about understanding different things, understanding different companies, different people, and that's why we have a project dictionary. The project dictionary has goal to understand the project communications between different organizations, different people. When you're not using the PMI lexicon or other words that you have in your dictionary that you're using or abbreviations, it's very important to include them into a project dictionary. Now, there are sometimes different interpretations of the same word, and you have to be sure that when a term is used or a word is used, that you give the same value, the same meaning to that word, and that you both understand each other. Within the project, all the people should have the same meaning for the same words or expressions or abbreviations. And for example, we have the example of ASAP or FTE. FTE, in the case with one of my colleagues, they called it a full-time equivalent. But in the case where we had the discussion, it was a field terminating equipment, which is something different, but we have the same meaning, we have the same abbreviation, but they mean something different. Another thing to look at when we are considering the projects, we have to look at the pain curve. And the pain curve depends on preparation. Now, what we see in the curve here is when we don't have a preparation, we see the red curve going higher and higher, more and more problems, more issues over time. Preparation is different. We have more time that we invest in the beginning, but we gain that time at the end. Now, basically what we have is people are afraid of the ramp-up time. They want to start working immediately. And when you do the planning, the ramp-up time, you don't see anything that's being done. People don't like that. So typically, they want to start working. Now, the thing here is, do we plan or no planning? When we have the planning, we look at the preparation, we understand what we are doing. And when there is no planning, there is no preparation. And we basically will find later more and more things that are going wrong. We give, in fact, a false feeling at the beginning when we start without the planning because everything is going very fast, there is action, but we may lose out of sight what's happening in the future. Now, towards the end of the project, we find more and more problems because of the lack of preparation. Planning creates more work at the beginning. On the other side, at the end, it's easier and there is less rework and there are less problems and issues at the end of the project. So the pain curve, very important to understand. Better to organize, better to plan before we start working. Of course, we have to inform the customer about what we are doing, telling them that we are working on the different items, showing them what they are doing, because then they see that we are dealing with it. Typically, what I saw when a solution was sold to a new customer, it was given to implementation, and the implementation team didn't really communicate with the customer until they started doing all kinds of different installations. But in the time before, they didn't know anything about it. Now, when we look at progressive elaboration, we already spoke a little bit about it. Now, when we start with the project, there is very little information available. Now, we have a macroscopic view of the result of the project. We know where we're going, where we want to go to, but we have a very high level of uncertainty because at the beginning, we still have a very high number of unknowns. Now, from the planning steps, once we start with the planning, more and more details become available, and progressively we know more and more and more about the project. Progressively, the details of the project unravel. And at the end of the planning step, we may have discovered many of the initial unknowns. Now, projects are done in different planning windows. So basically, we see what we can estimate, what we can evaluate. And that will be the first planning horizon. But once we continue, we go further, we see that the planning window, the planning horizon is also moving forward. And gradually, we find more elements, more information, and that's what we call progressive elaboration. A typical application of the rolling wave approach, where we see we have the known planning horizon, the person watching the mountain here, there are the parts in red where we don't know anything, on the other side is quite unknown, and like I said, a typical application of progressive elaboration. Now, we cannot do, we cannot plan everything with certainty, and we have to see how the project is going to identify those uncertainties. And then we see the planning horizon, you go to the first spike, and then you see what you didn't see before, and you can continue each of the time. So you have to be ready to those planning horizons and to the progressive elaboration, the progressive observation of all the elements related to the project. Each horizon is a phase that is well known to the project manager, so we know what we can do. We can identify or we reduce the unknowns to an acceptable level, and the project manager has a limited view, but every step he or she or the project continues, the project manager will understand more and more about the uncertainties. By progressing in the project, more information becomes available, and the project manager can adjust the actions to deal with that new information. Now let's have a look at some definitions that are in the document, in the lexicon. Activity. An activity is a distinct scheduled portion of work performed during the project. It's the work we're going to do. They have made a nice definition. Change control, a process whereby modification to documents, deliverables, or baselines associated with the project are identified, documented, approved, or rejected. And fast tracking, a schedule compression technique in which activities or phases normally done in sequence are performed in parallel for at least a portion of their duration. So you see some examples of the definitions in that lexicon, but there are a lot of definitions. I don't think you have to learn them by heart, but going through them while you're preparing, having it next to you, so whenever you encounter a different or a question related to a definition, or when you have to understand what a term means, you can refer to that document. You cannot use it on the exam itself, but at least in the preparation and in this course, you can understand it, you can learn it. So that was it for this first video. Thank you very much. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and on the bell button. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you and bye-bye.